Have you ever wondered how every puppet combo game is interconnected in said indie developer's microcosm? Is it true that there's multiple links to and from every character that brings each game closer than they seem? Could there be something more sinister that lurks beneath the surface that isn't eager to greet us and wants to stay clandestine, having us ignore its presence? Well, we'll just find out, won't we? It starts with Sanitarium Massacre with Nicholas BURR, a character who totally wasn't formerly Michael Myers and had to drop that identity because of copyright, but when Nicholas BURR broke out of his room in the sanitarium and killed everyone there, which laid the foundation for a whole set of crucial events that would come later, and fundamentally tie the story together. In the second installment of the BURR trilogy, Monster with Eyes of Ice, BURR went around burglarizing homes indiscriminately and killing the people inside. There, we truly got to see what a bloodthirsty psychopath this man was, and how someone like him needs to be contained at all costs. Subsequently, in Babysitter Bloodbath, BURR tried to kill Sarah and Billy but ultimately failed, but managed to evade capture because his body was never found by authorities. Nicholas BURR seems like he's his own story, and because we can't find any connection besides the ones the aforementioned games have with each other. The Church of the Father's Vision is by far the most important link between all the games there is. For those of you who don't know or need refreshment, the Church of the Father's Vision, or CFV for short, is the name of a religious cult featured in a few puppet combo games, most notably including Stay Out of the House, Nun Massacre, and Feed Me Billy. In all of the aforementioned games, there's TV sets that play the same looping video saying this:
"Rejoice, child. Rejoice in the knowledge of your conviction. You have completed our series. You are now of the enlightened children, learned in the ways of your Father's vision. As you know, your goals are divine, and your methods are pure. You have received an additional parcel with the final volume of our series. I would ask you now to open it and observe its contents. You now have your goal. Join us as we create our perfect world. Begin creating your Father's vision."
It's a cult that worships unworldly deities such as the Whole, or aliens from other worlds, giving them sacrifices of human or animal meat to sate their hunger. There is a preacher that talks to Billy on the phone in Feed Me Billy that also appears in Stay Out of the House's audio, who tells Billy and the Butcher this. There are also other theorized members such as Larry, the Night Ripper, and the Riverside Incident Killer. The Easter Ripper is most likely a member of the CFV because he uses a CFV labeled cassette. The theorized leader of the CFV is known as the Father. The Father is believed to be the preacher that spreads his messages through television programs and phone messages. And knowing how televangelists influence people, this is typical slimy, persuasive, cunning, and manipulative behavior we know them to practice in order to placate their alien pet's desire for fear. In terms of speculating as to what their intentions are, it's hard to know for sure, but the main object for the CFV members we know of is to feed their aliens the flesh of a creature who has experienced fear. More precisely, the Butcher's theoretical job is to kidnap people in the dead of night, then trap them in cages, indoors or in the yard, and let them slowly starve to death to finish them off. Whilst the victim is caged, a TV or two will play an audio clip featuring the same preacher who was on the phone with Billy. Then, once the victim is subdued or dead, they will be dragged down into the house's basement to feed the beast down below. This beast in the basement is likely one of the deities that the CFV worships or employs in some way to achieve their paramount goal. Additionally, at night, Billy will follow whatever commands the Hole gives him, mainly going out and killing civilians to feed it with obsequiously because Billy seems to worship the Hole like a deity. It's pretty unknown what the nun's intentions and actions are outside of the school she resides in, because if she was actually involved with an entity, she would have to go out, scare the people to the creature's desire, and feed flesh to it. The only things related to alien feeding are the CFV loop that plays on one of her TVs and the fact that there's a pentagram in the same room. One could speculate that the nun herself is one of the alien creatures, and she feeds off the fear instilled in the recently deceased, but there's no way to confirm this as of now. Knowing the endings to Nun Massacre and how the nun seemingly defies the laws of physics in terms of where she appears and how she interacts with the physical world, it's safe to say that the nun is most likely a manifestation of Mrs. McDonald's grief due to the loss of her daughter because of her own neglect. Before the events of the game, the Riverside Incident killer committed a series of disturbing and destructive crimes, many of which are ritualistic in nature. Deep inside the culprit's lair, inside one of the rooms where he stores his equipment, on the wall are displayed several newspaper articles related to his activity. The first article, where the police sketch of the suspect was presented, is about a quadruple homicide of Dr. James Van Houten's family. The house was ablaze, all the bodies have been dismembered in a ritualistic manner, and an arm of Arnold Van Houten was never found, suggesting that the assailant took it with him. Earlier, a suspicious individual was reported roaming around Van Houten's backyard. A police sketch was made according to the witness description. Apparently, he also resorts to abduct his victims right from the crime scene sometimes. A 1975 Ford Bronco was discovered by a transport driver. The vehicle was set on fire earlier, but the flames were extinguished by the freezing temperature and two car occupants. Marvin Delaney and his girlfriend Megan Nelson were missing with no traces or leads. Another instance of kidnapping happened in a small rental house in northern Washington, where Valdez and Caitlin Nordstrom died in a fire while their roommate Liza Sidney was nowhere to be found, thus making her a suspect. But since this article is a part of the main antagonist's collection, it was obviously his doing. Considering his hideout being the abandoned Riverside State Hospital and his next victim being a psychiatrist from that hospital, it's presumed that he used to be a patient there. Dr. Richard Eckert was found dead by his maid, Rhonda McKenzie. She claimed that she discovered his corpse sitting in a chair with its head removed and replaced with a bizarre crown made out of black feathers. His documented works were destroyed as well, leading authorities to believe a culprit did it in order to dispose of some important information tied to him. The killer is absolutely ruthless, going as far as murdering and dismembering children. Similarly to previous murders, the house of the Lawson family, Darren, Patrice, and their 3 children has been infiltrated, occupants killed, their bodies mutilated, dismembered, and limbs placed around the house in a ritualistic manner. Since the house was almost entirely engulfed into flames, the police first considered it to be an accident, but the fact that all the victims prior to their deaths were attacked by a large cutting weapon, most likely a machete since it can be found in the killer's lair, made it very unlikely. In July 1991, a group of hikers happened upon a garbage bag containing a videotape and some articles of clothing in Spring Forest State Park. After viewing the footage, they turned it into the local police, believing it to be a prank. Limited portions of the tape have been released to the public in hopes of identifying the persons involved. The tape starts on May 19 of 1989 at 6:24 p.m. It's filming the interior of a decrepit psychiatric hospital. Nothing really stands out besides a few pentagrams and numbers 666 on the walls in one of the rooms, with bath nearby the cafeteria and a few working lights that are red for some reason. The footage stops and resumes at 7:15 p.m. in a surgery and storage area.